For a chapter that seems to have just absolutely flown by, surprisingly, there was still a pretty good amount of substance to take in and digest. Like, I swear, Gege is one of the very few artists that can illustrate amazing choreography while also conveying to us the smallest details that just give the fight so much more. Needless to say, chapter 232 of Jujutsu Kaisen was an absolute banger. Right from the start of the chapter, there's just some insane things happening. Not only is Gojo using new applications of his blue technique, but he also uses a new application of his red technique that we've never seen before. He even uses the long forgotten black flash. So yeah, as I'm sure a lot of you have already realized by now, this is 100% a Gojo chapter. Like, let's be real here. Putting aside the fact that next chapter Gojo is probably going to have to fight Mahoraga, if this chapter hasn't shown you that Gojo is in fact the strongest, then I really don't know what will. To be fair, I do understand that most of the characters watching the fight are pretty worried about Gojo for most of the chapter, and I also understand that due to the will, Sukuna in a way is also under a heavy handicap. So I will admit that there is some room to argue for Sukuna's case here, but if we're just being 100% honest, as most of you know, Sukuna has had way more advantages in this fight. Like the fact that through Yuji's body, he's been able to see the Limitless in action on multiple occasions, not to mention the fact that he's stolen the 10 Shadows technique from Megami, which is by far the biggest elephant in the room. It's clear to see that throughout the fight with the domain expansions and just the use of cursed techniques and stuff like that, Gojo is obviously the strongest. His Limitless was just more superior than the Cleave Dismantle, and although Gojo's cursed energy reserves aren't as big as Sukuna's, it almost doesn't matter because due to the 6 eyes, Gojo's efficiency and just overall potential alone makes up more than enough to call it an even battle. And yes, I know that Sukuna's hiding some techniques like the black box and stuff like that we haven't really seen yet, but we've also known for the longest time now that it doesn't really matter what Sukuna's cursed techniques are, because whatever Sukuna's cursed technique is, most likely it still can't bypass the Limitless. So yeah, I would definitely say that Gojo is stronger. Regardless, now that Sukuna's huge gamble of using the Dharma Wheel has paid off, it looks as though the Divine General Mahoraga has completely adapted to the Limitless. So I guess the number one question is, what is Satoru Gojo gonna do to escape Mahoraga's clutches? Before I get into everything though, I do want to make clear that if you like JJK content, as well as other anime or manga like Hunter x Hunter, to make sure you subscribe to the channel. My last goal was to hit 1,000 subs by October, but to my genuine surprise, that video actually ended up doing insanely good. So we actually hit 1,000 pretty much overnight. Regardless of that though, I do want to genuinely say thank you for 1,000 subs. Hitting my goal so soon like that is definitely a good problem to have, and it's pretty much all thanks to you guys' support. So my new goal is actually 5,000 subs by the end of the year, so I'm gonna just leave that to you goats. Even if it's not overnight, I'm still pretty confident that we can hit that goal. So yeah, thanks in advance and enjoy the video. So with round 2 in full swing, both fighters look to pressure the other into making even the slightest mistake, and as both sorcerers seem to almost instinctually know, the slightest blunder at this point could very well mean death for either fighter. That's made clear in the fact that one mistake from Gojo would mean letting the will adapt from Mahoraga, while one mistake for Sukuna would mean getting hit by full power Limitless, both cases not being ideal for either. Well, we see the usual characters like Yuji and Hikari watching and commenting on the fight, and then Yuji brings up a pretty important question. Is it time that's used for the adaptation, or is it experience? Funnily enough though, although Kashimo responds by pretty much saying it doesn't matter, which is a really good point, at the end of the day, I do think this little detail will become more important next chapter, because even though we get a relatively good idea of how Mahoraga works as a cursed spirit from his fight with Sukuna back in Shibuya, we still can't say for sure how exactly everything works in regards to the rules, especially when the wheel has already been used by Sukuna. The only thing that's certain is that Gojo is now going to have to fight the hardest 2v1 fight of his entire career. So I guess the new question then becomes, is there even a way for Gojo to defeat Mahoraga given the condition that he can't use his curse technique? Well, let's talk about it. In order for us to somewhat accurately gauge if Gojo even has a remote chance of beating Mahoraga, well, first we must determine what exactly the Dharma Wheel has adapted to. If we assume that the wheel has only adapted to blue, then there's still a pretty good chance for Gojo to come out of this relatively okay. On the other hand, if the wheel has already adapted to the entirety of Limitless, then Gojo is going to have a very big problem. And let's all be real here, we know Mahoraga has adapted to all of Limitless because at the end of the chapter, Mahoraga just straight straight up cuts through infinity, slashing Gojo across his chest. The reason I even bring up the hypothetical is because I feel like a lot of people is going to think that Mahoraga just adapted to Blue or part of it or something like that. But yeah, if you look at the last page, Mahoraga is indeed cutting through Gojo, so he cuts through infinity. So yeah, it's probably safe to say he's adapted to all of Limitless. Being honest though, it would just be way too easy if that was the case. I think one thing Gojo fans and Sukuna fans can agree on is that Mahoraga has been way too relevant just to be one-shotted or packed up in like half a chapter or anything crazy like that, you know. This isn't even the first time he's appeared in the fight, so yeah, of course I can understand why, you know, some people might just want this narrative beat to pay off, because believe it or not, subjectiveness aside, even though we've been getting what's pretty much the best fight in the entire series, at least on the technical level, you'll still find people on the internet saying the fight is being dragged out, or even complaining that the fight had just been going on too long in general. And I guess this is just one of those things that I just can't agree with at all, simply because it's just too disingenuous. Like, I just don't think it's a stretch to say that the writing for the past 10 or 11 chapters have been anything short of amazing. And just think about it, not only is this one of the most detailed fights in the series due to the sheer amount of skills and proficiency in regard to cursed energy and cursed techniques, and it's also the most important fight of the series narrative wise. So yeah, I don't really understand how someone could not be enjoying these chapters or even think it's too long when the fight is literally going to shape the rest of the series. But yeah, I just talk on the internet, so I'm personally not even going to give this topic any more relevancy. Just know at the end of the day, the same people that will complain week to week are the same ones reading the chapters week to week, so take that as you will. Anyway, small tangents aside, I think in order for Gojo to defeat Mahoraga, he's going to need to show a level of sorcery that is, for lack of a better word, unrivaled in comparison to everyone else. There is one thing going into this that's good for Gojo, and that's that he just hit a black flash, so technically he should be in the zone. And from what we know about being in the zone, we know that once you enter it, you feel as though you've tapped into the core of cursed energy in a sense, boosting the user's proficiency up to 120%, as we saw with Yuji, Mahito, and Todo back in the Shibuya arc. So now that Mahoraga has adapted to the Limitless, Gojo is essentially a lot like Yuji in a sense, at least when it comes to this fight of not being able to use cursed techniques. And before you go down in the comments typing some nonsense about how Gege has fallen off or something crazy like that, I don't mean that now Yuji and Gojo are now the same strength or anything like that. I'm just saying that they're similar in the sense that they both have no curse technique to use. Nevertheless, I still stand on the idea that this fight will go on for another 2 or 3 chapters, give or take, and it would make sense given how the volume is actually ending pretty soon here, so it would be great timing. But that's pretty much all I had to say for this video. I'm not gonna waste you guys' time going through like theories and stuff like that, because well, it might be a little hard to tell, but I am feeling a bit sick, so I did want to keep this short. Plus, there's just so many ways the story could go from here on out. Regardless though, just keep in mind that now that Gojo has had his chapter, I wouldn't be surprised if the next chapter is all about Mahoraga and Sukuna. But anyways, I'm gonna head out. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and maybe subscribe if you like this kind of content, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Oh, speaking of blessings, that's right, I almost forgot. I named my cursed spirit Megami.